Hi, everybody. I'm Britt Campbell, the Manager of Public Engagement at the Autry. At the Autry, we always start our programs with a land acknowledgement. So I'm going to read that now. At the beginning of our programs, we would like to acknowledge that the Autry is on ancestral lands of the Gabrielina Tongva and recognize them as the caretakers of this land. If you are joining us from outside of the LA area, I encourage you to do a little research on perhaps what tribe or tribes lands you are on. It's fascinating information, and it's just always kind of nice to acknowledge those that came before us, those that are with us now, and those who will be with us when we're gone. So I also now want to take a moment to acknowledge all of the essential workers. I'm going to include here, including but not limited to, because this list is not exhaustive, but it is just a shout out to mental and health care workers. Shout out Nikolai, who's in that field. Any bus drivers, civic workers, grocery store labor forces, and anyone else who is put in a public facing role at this time. Thank you for your services. We also hope that everyone here is in good health and finding some time for self-care. I hope not to speak again, so I'm going to turn it over to Nikolai from Dryland, who will be the host of the rest of the session.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. We have a great program for you guys. I'm going to start off by reading the bios for our featured poets. We have Vane Lisette and Viva Padilla. So I'm going to read their bios first, and then Vane will go ahead and start reading. Vane Lisette, she, they pronouns, is a community archivist, visual poet, illustrator, and DJ at Pocha Punk's Power Hour, a radio show on 101.5 FM KQBH, Boa Heights. She studied film, audio restoration, and preservation at UC Santa Barbara, UNAM in Mexico City, and La Cineteca Nacional, the National Film Archive of Mexico. Through that work, Lisette became an advocate of DIY restoration and preservation of material memory to restore with stories. Not only has she focused on material archive, but has also worked in audio archiving, especially the work she's dedicated on community radio. Lisette finds ways to connect all these mediums to tell a story and encourage others to do the same. Viva Padilla is a poet and founding editor of Dryland, an independent print literary journal founded in South Central Los Angeles in 2015. She is a first-generation Chicana, daughter of Mexican immigrants who crossed the border. She has been in the trenches at the LA Times, Red Hen Press, and Punk Hostage Press. Her poetry has been featured in Coal Serpent, Poets Arising from LA's Cultural Quakes and Shifts, Acento's Review, We Are Mitu, and others. She featured at Casa de las Americas in Havana, Cuba, for their Latinos in los Estados Unidos conference last October. In December 2019, Dryland and Viva were featured on the front page of the LA Times California section. She is currently working on a bilingual poetry manuscript. And with that, let's go ahead and get into some poetry. Vane.
Thank you, Nick.
Come on.
Hey everyone, thank you for being here. Okay, so my mother's wind chimes hang from the unit that they rent behind the landlord's south of downtown LA. They are all in different sizes, have different are each other's best companion on windy days, que están contados en LA. They welcomed us in get back from home, when we get back from school or work, or away from the space. Y se despedían. Since the chimes hung so low, it hit the screen door that activated our audio diaries for the day. The chimes ratted out my brother and I whenever we would sneak back into the house, but comforted us when the sounds from our block proved to be too much. Happiest when we didn't hear a siren or helicopter hover over the neighborhoods at night. The best of days when the chimes just danced because of this, not to cover up. The chimes were present the day my brother stormed off an afternoon in 2001. They let out a huge cry after he swung the door so hard to let us know he won't be returning, and that things would obviously change. Annoying chimes that didn't let us hear the TV too well on a windy day because they had a lot to say on those days, especially. But they were present more than I was. The same chimes that my mom would upkeep every day as if she was watering them to keep them chiming. After her morning prayers that reminded her of the teachings from the new life she led. These practices were sacred to her. My mother looked to them for healing purposes, I assumed. Or she just liked the way they decorated the small entrance of the space that she grew to love but would never have completely. This made it feel more permanent. I just wanted the chimes to give me a break from time to time. Don't snitch if I sneak out to that one gig, or if I stay up painting memories across town. But they were too honest and yelled when I opened the door, even if I clutched them in my hand to be silent. You can't silence those things. And looking back, I wouldn't want to, knowing what I know now. They've aged just like we have. The glass ones don't look as clear as they did when I was younger. The paint on the wooden animals chipped on the others, but my mom didn't care. You wouldn't think to throw these out. It never entered my mind, but I had to ask her more about them. There are letters carved on the wooden wind chimes with the chip paint that I didn't notice as a kid, but notice now as a curious, close to 30-year-old daughter that wants to know every detail about everything to make sense of why things had to be this way. I finally came around to asking my mother a few weeks after my brother's memorial service last October. ¿Y eso qué? I asked as she brought down one of the chimes to clean as part of her ritual. I noticed that it had a nest with little eggs on them. The mama bird must have been getting their food at the time. I quiero pensar que nos vienen a visitar para contarnos cómo les va, she said. I wasn't following. I looked over to the one she held in her hand, with the little lives huddled growing from it. Had the letters TQ and Mijo carved onto the wooden circle that holds the strings that pull the metal pipe. I let out a few tears, as did she, and told me jokingly that my brother talks a lot.
I guess, Viva, I guess you're up next.
All right. I'm going to start with this poem, and then I'm going to read hopefully two other ones. I'm not sure, but I'm going to get really close to my screen so you guys can hear me. Utilizing Google Maps to triangulate the course of my desmadre over the years. First start at some hospital run by nuns in East Los. Moved me over to South Central, to a house built in 1910 with an 80-year-old avocado tree overrun by weeds. The house never changed its bones after the Northridge earthquake, but it's bracing itself for the big one. The airplanes that flew over Century Boulevard always sounded closer in the rain. The freight train to Wilmington at night disrupted my sleep. My grandpa went straight to sleep as soon as he stepped on the tracks. That train in Colima, Mexico was never known to miss a thing. An AK-47 once killed an 8-year-old boy around 1 a.m. outside of a bar down the street from my house. Since then, I imagine angry bullets are a spatial anomaly in the space-time continuum. There is no one ever there actually holding a gun. Dad's last song request was Time to Say Goodbye by Andrea Bocelli and Sarah Brightman. He said that when he fell asleep, he wasn't there anymore. He woke himself up by calling my name. I was there by his side telling him what time it was. He could feel no more pain. I swear I could feel nothing either, but it wasn't my time yet. I smoked weed on a rooftop of a converted garage in Linwood, shaved my head soon after. The city blamed it on the coming and going of freight trucks, stolen panties under the seats of truck drivers, and Little Caesars being the worst pizza because we can't eat it the next day. In Torrance, I threw a Halloween party in a barn in my backyard. No one could hear it from the street. No one lived on those streets anyway, I suspected. There's no way to know now. One night, many nights, truck bed, trying to find stars. Wandered to who knows where, there's no way to know now. Never found gold with meth heads meeting at donut shops at dawn. 80-year-old men stuck in front of TVs at 2 o'clock in the morning. And him showing me the Mustang he couldn't put back together again. His mom begging me to marry him as she sprays Raid all over his carpet. Wandered back out of South Central, who knows how. Coyotes are now surrounding the car I'm in with a man who's afraid to get high. Atop a hill on the east side, I'm always crying. He never cries. I walk up the hill, shake hands with the creatures, and ask them to quiet down. They roll their eyes. Later, in silence, they agree that the universe needs a balance. 30 days after quarantine, I leave my house. I rolled a blunt with a tree full of mockingbirds and a Camaro full of swans on the street. Me and Eva look at Kaya lilies etched onto a fence. The sky is so big above us. I dream of a house, lawn chairs, and hammocks to make it real. I drive back home, park atop a hill on the east side. Can't see outside my studio with its one window. A cricket is loud somewhere in my room. Can't make packs of creatures that won't stay still, so I sleep. I didn't really look at the screen at all, so I'm sorry if I didn't catch any messages or anything. Hopefully everything was good with the audio. Now I'm gonna read in Spanish. La extranjera. Sola por las calles camino, la extranjera soy. Me dicen que merezco esto, que en todos lados, menos en misa estoy. Me dieron vida en Sur Centro Los Ángeles, en América, donde las esquinas me ofrecen lana, donde si quiero mujer soy 40 veces al día, donde en la casa no hay casa, donde la familia vendió todo menos la madera del techo que tiene artritis ya. Dicen que por allí en Tecomán, cuerpos muertos no hablan por días, pero acá, cuerpos vivos no hablan por años. De uno se infectó al otro, por esta glotona de drogas. No me encuentro aquí, ni allá, ni en la luna. Tiene que haber un lugar para mí, me han dicho. Tiene que haber un lugar para mi alma, he oído. Thank you, guys. I think that's 5 minutes. I really don't want to go overboard because we have a time limit.
We have time if you want to read that other one.
Okay, I'll read one more. Sister Sage. Sister. Climbs up the ladder, shines with the sun. Bees sting, church dress, too big for you. The world could eat you, little star. Where have you gone? We cannot find unnamed places. Sleepwalker. Deceiving dreams. Showers are cold. Foreign transmissions report to room 4. Never understanding to how you got to where you can't even spend a moment alone. You dream of fire, your gown of stone. Footsteps can't be heard. Makes sense to you no more.
Thank you, Viva.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get into a little discussion here. The theme for today is sound, and one of the sounds right now that's getting people through this whole quarantine pandemic stuff is music. And so I wanted to ask both of the poets, what are you guys listening to right now to get you through all this?
I think I'll start. Since I have pictures of my records, I've been listening to Antonio Carlos Jobim, what else? Leonard Cohen, I think there's a picture of it in here. Leo Dan, Roberto Carlos, Los Bunkies. I've actually been kind of hopeful by, is a project by Café Tacuba. I've actually, in the beginning of the quarantine, I was listening to like funk and like all this happy stuff because I was like happy to be home. But now I'm listening to more chill stuff. And that's kind of like, oh, and that Desmond Decker, of course, reggae. So yeah, I've been on that chill kind of tip right now.
Vane?
I've been listening to a mix of things. I've been looking into my cassette collection. So you're doing vinyl as I do cassettes. So I've been listening to a lot of soundtracks actually on cassette. So if y'all haven't heard Repo Man soundtrack, as well as Romeo and Juliet '96 was amazing. And also I have a lot of homies who produce cassettes. So Caja de Ritmos with Alaska, Pegamoides has been great to look back on. We drove back from San Jose, so we've been listening to everything that we can connect to a pandemic mixtape. So everything is connected to a pandemic mixtape. So yeah, so it's been my mixtape.
And there's been a lot of talk about, ever since the shelter in place started, people are kind of hearing birds, a lot of more bird chirping, or I don't know if it's more or people are just maybe paying attention now. So I'm wondering if there's any sounds to you that are more prominent now that you're stuck at home.
Beba?
I can go first.
Or yeah.
I don't know. I haven't really noticed a difference where I'm at. Like I live close to like up a hill, so I haven't really noticed a difference. It's kind of naturey over here, but no, not really. It hasn't been anything dramatic. I mean, a cricket went into my room last night. That's what I added to the poem at the end there. And I don't know how he got in, but that's kind of, he's still in my house. So that's kind of been new. The cricket is quarantining with me. I don't know.
Yeah, same. I feel like Viva and I have talked about this too in terms of what differences I guess we hear in the city. I've lived in Mexico City in the past, and I feel like it's louder than it is in LA. So now with all of this going on, there is some limitations, I guess, with what I can hear now, and I don't remember. So I don't remember certain sounds that I really wish I could. So I have to like write them out or draw them out. But I feel like I listen to the trees more because they're right next to the window, so it's been pretty loud in terms of the wind. I visited my mom yesterday, and those wind chimes really are just as loud as they were when I was a kid. So I feel like I'm more grateful for that.
Okay, I have a couple more questions for you guys, but I think we're also taking questions from you guys. I think, do we have, Brittany, do we have the hand raising option? And you
We
guys
do.
can also,
Yeah, I didn't want to give too much instructions at the beginning, but so Rob Gallagher, who's the AV supervisor from the Autry, is here. We can give a shout out to him for bringing up those beautiful vinyl collection that Viva had sent before, and Vane's collage. If you'd seen the DIY flyer, that's all her work. So yes, thank you for that contribution as well. Back to the functions we're talking about now. If you hover over your name, you should be able to raise your hand. So we can take questions by either unmuting your mic if you're not talking over anybody and the space is respectful, typing a question in the chat, or raising your hand via the Zoom features. And Rob and I will be monitoring the hands. Nikolai will be trying to monitor the in-person conversation. And if chat is your preference, I'll read out loud your question and try to pronounce your name correctly. And if I do not, please feel free to correct me. I'm just reading it out of what happens in the chat. So yeah, let's feel free to take some questions from the audience.
cool. Thank you, Brittany. Vane, I wanted to ask you about your piece. Is this something that you wrote just for this? How did you come up with the idea for that? Or is it something that you've been wanting to write for a while?
I feel like it's been like the connection that I make with archiving. It's all been accumulating to create itself like its own piece. So when I mentioned like restoring with stories, I feel like I've already had a lot of stories to just kind of like bring together, even though I didn't know was coming together. So in talking about sound, I guess I never really noticed these unique, simple sounds of my everyday that I wasn't as appreciative toward in the past, and now I am. And so I was able to connect it with drawings that I've made already. So I like to doodle, if y'all can tell already by the flyer and by what you saw on the screen. I like to make a connection or like draw as I write. I tend to say this like I draw my feelings. So in order to like understand what it is that I'm writing, I add a visual to it. As simple as it is, like drawing the entrance to my mom's, you know, like house, or as simple as drawing flowers to understand what it means to listen to the wind rustle through plants and trees. So that's the connection I made to understand what it was that I was already like feeling and wanting to like materialize on paper, as well as like with color, to add vibrancy to the words and to the
Thank
story, essentially.
thank you. Thank you. Before we start taking questions from you guys, I have one more question I want to ask to Viva. Can you talk about not so much writing, but actually reading in Spanish and you know the importance of that?
Um, sure. I mean, I grew up in a really strict household where my dad didn't allow us to speak English in the house. He even had a sign in the house, like above the closed off chimney. It would say "No se habla inglés." And so whenever we would speak English, he would just point to that sign, and we'd be like, "Oh." And he also made us read the Bible like every night in Spanish. So I had already had it in my mind to kind of like express myself in Spanish naturally. It was just like a natural thing. So when I started writing and taking it more seriously, I noticed that I would start writing in Spanish and I just couldn't help myself. I was just like, I'm gonna just go with this, you know, because I'm not the type to stop myself from like translating myself in my mind. So I was like, I'm gonna write in Spanish and I'm gonna write in English and I'm just gonna write whatever my, you know, the moment is asking me to write. And like it doesn't, I never stopped myself, or I never tried to write in Spanish or try to write in English. The poem just kind of wants to come out in the way that it wants to come out, and that can be either English or Spanish. But I do think it's important to read in Spanish at different spaces so people, I mean, we're from LA, and I mean, everyone here, almost everyone here is, you know, coming from other countries that speak Spanish. So it's important to kind of like also connect with the different textures and different sides of humanity that you can't really get through just plain English. Spanish has its own other character, you know. So it's, I love connecting with it, and I love connecting with people through my Spanish poetry.
Just jumping in, we have a hand raised.
Yeah, it's Chantal.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. I had a question for both of the artists. I wanted to know what your relationship with silence is and how it affects your work.
Nice.
I guess I'll go first. Lana, you want to go first?
Como sea. Go.
You know, I'm kind of like when it comes to writing, I don't really have like a whole process where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go for a walk and then I'm gonna go back to my house and sit and force myself to write. I'm kind of like, I'm always like looking for answers, not through writing and not through reading. Like I have to go somewhere. Like I have to, like for example, for this, the poem that I wrote today, that I presented today, utilizing Google Maps to triangulate my desmadre over the years. I went and like I drove around the city with my homegirl, and we went to different parts of LA, and during this quarantine, and we listened to like Lana Del Rey, Lebanon, Hanover. We were just like listening to like The Cure and just getting into all kinds of moods. So I think it's important to kind of like make space for yourself to be able to then be comfortable in like this silence that that you're looking for. Like sometimes it's hard to find a space where things can be completely silent. So for me, it's always like I need to find a way to break out of the break out of my mind, and then I can come back in, and I can be in my silence, and I'm able to like concentrate. I'm able to write. So for me, it's like a whole process of me trying to come back to myself and listen to myself, so then I can write. Um, so yeah, silence plays a huge key in that, because I need to just listen to my own self. But it's the whole process to get there.
Yeah, I'm terrified of silence. I actually wrote pages of material in regards to like how terrifying silence is to me. It plays like the evil character in my silent film, right? Because silent film, although it's called silent film, there's still a lot of sound that comes from it. So I need to fill in the spaces on a daily. I can't have like a quiet car ride, even if it's just 5 minutes. Like I need to play at least one track. If I'm taking a shower, I know how long I take because I know how long that song is that I play while I'm showering. It's just something that gives me comfort in a world where like I feel like I lived very fearful as a young kid because I was sick when I was younger, so my parents were very protective, and the only way I can like add color to that life that I had was just by filling it up with sound. So even when I write, like even if I'm listening to like a song that has no connection to what I'm writing, I like it helps me. It helps to just fill in that void. Just like in my drawings, like it's the connection that I make where like I can't have like gaps in the drawings or gaps in like space and flyers. Like I have to fill it up in some way. So that's just how I like translate it to like the volume in my life. So yeah, I'm terrified of silence. But in a way, maybe that's my mission, right? To like find comfort in silence at some point. But right now is not the time, or at least I haven't learned to navigate that yet.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because like I grew up like in a really busy household. It was like 8 of us in a 2-bedroom house. So there was never any silence. And the only way I always craved that space and that silence. So what I would do is I would go outside and like sit within the trees, or like find a space under the table in the dining room and like put a blanket so no one could see me. Or I would go to like the laundry room in my house and like hide in a corner. I always like wanted to just for things to just be quiet, because there was always so much activity, so many kids running around, music. And I think that's why I'm like I always seek it, and like, it's good. And when I write, I need it.
Or at least like having some control, right? Of like what is sound around you.
Yeah,
Because I
I
feel
mean,
like I'm the happiest in like when I'm in traffic, actually, like driving in my car and like picking out the music, but at times just like turning down the music, but at least I have some control over it, as opposed to like the uncontrollable sounds in my surroundings, like you just mentioned right now. So that has everything to do with it, like what you control and what you can't control.
yeah, and I mean, I've lived in places where I've lived in different parts of LA. Like I've lived in Linwood, I've lived in Inglewood, South Central. Now I'm on the East Side, and there are different like markers to different parts of the city in terms of sound. Like I remember when I lived deeper in South Central, I lived by a freeway, and that was like really soothing to me. Like I would be able to be by a window and like read a book, and I'd fall asleep just listening to the sound of the freeway and the traffic, kind of like you said. And then when I lived in Linwood, there were so many trucks, freight trucks going by, and I could never concentrate. So I think there's always like in LA, there's always just like
So many.
you can't fully control, you know, the sounds, but music definitely plays a part in that comfort, where we can find like, solitude and time for ourselves.
Um, there's a couple of questions on the group chat I wanted to get to from a Christian. He's asking, do you guys have any go-to music for when you're writing?
Go-to music. Um, well, I can tell you what I was listening to when I was writing this week. I've been listening to a lot of, listen to, I think I saw someone mention Django Reinhardt, and it's funny because I have a little post-it here that I drew of Django, because that's what I've been listening to as well. So that's just amazing to have, not only as background, but on the foreground too, because his music's so influential. I've also been listening to Suede, this like old like British band. That it was just nice like having to uncover all these like old CDs that I made when I was younger. So I like to just revisit that like younger version of myself and like what they listen to, but is still loving to this day. So yeah, I can listen to anything while writing, I feel, because I just can't have silence like I mentioned.
For me, I tend to, some things just inspire me. Like I've recently been listening to Max Roach, it's time, uh, and for some reason it just got me going. It just got me in the mood to like think about all these ideas that were running through my head, like really explore them. So I think for me, music is, it helps me get into a mood of like having conversations with myself, and then it gets me in this like stream of consciousness mood where I feel like writing. Then I start getting into the mood. When it comes to actually writing, it depends. Like sometimes I'll write to a song because it's really affected me. Like there's a song by a group in Mexico called Ampersand, and I remember writing to them a lot, just being really inspired by them. And then sometimes that doesn't always work. Like it's just, it happens on its own. So I feel like sometimes I'll be inspired by a song and it doesn't always work for me though. Um, but when it comes to just writing stuff down and like actually writing down a poem, you know, I try to listen to like chill beats. Like if you go to YouTube, there's like that lo-fi hip hop beats. It's just so chill. There's no words to kind of like distract you, and it puts you in like a good vibe. I think that's really helpful for getting some work done.
Um,
I just want
Helps
to
me.
add that also. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
There's like a lag, so I'm not sure. Like, okay, yeah, like with your last point, I've been listening to a lot of MF Doom, and I feel like constantly having it like in loop. The special herbs has been helpful
Oh
any
yeah.
day, anytime. But to be a as well, like since like I Nikolai did mention that I'm a part of a community radio station. I feel like I'm constantly looped into like other folks' mixes, different radio shows to support. There's like metal shows, there's punk shows, there's hip hop, there's 90s indie, or it could be a mix of things, but just to like hear or tune in into what other people are listening to is really cool. So I'm always thankful to have that like
Right.
gateway as well, like people sharing music. Not only like what it is that I want to pick or shuffle in my mix, but like what other people are also listening to has been really cool while
Yeah.
writing. So
Yeah, I actually did like
yeah.
a research poll the other day on my Instagram. I asked people like, what kind of music would you play if you had a post-pandemic party? Like, what would your DJ play? And I kind of like broke down the details of like genres and stuff. And most people were choosing like house music, dance music from the 90s. Like, like everything but the girl, like what else? Um, you know,
How about that
there's a
90s
song
freestyle or 80s
Be Light,
freestyle?
just like a bunch of like, and also rock en español, Tren al Sur, Los Prisioneros, and then some cumbia. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of like, yeah. So I've been listening to those tracks too recently, just to see like what everybody else is listening to, and it's good to see like people are really feeling like this desire to like celebrate life after all this is over, like party like we're in the 90s again, and I think like that carefreeness, it's so appealing right now, to just feel like there's no, like, to just let go of all this and just kind of throw a big party with all your friends and just play all this dope music from the 90s, you know? So,
It's like we're
yeah.
planning all the mixes for that party, right? That's what
Yeah,
we're doing right now.
we're making mixes. This is how we're spending our quarantine.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Um,
Yeah.
Cumbia sobre el Río, of course, you know, just so many songs. So, yeah, we're excited for future parties.
um, I want to get into more of the questions here in the chat. People should still feel free to use the raising hand option, and we'll try and get to you. We have plenty of time right now. But Janice is asking, since we're discussing sound in Los Angeles, what sounds do you think are distinctive to LA, and do you have a favorite LA sound? And I think you kind of spoke to this a little bit before, Viva.
Yeah, that freeway sound sounds like the ocean. I'm down. I like it. I like that sound.
Yeah. I mean, I live near the blue line, so to me, it's that, just the blue line
Yeah.
passing by, and you can sleep through it. Once you get used to it, you can sleep through it.
I live right off of the blue line, the Long Beach stop. So that's the loudest part I feel of the, no, not the green line, I'm sorry, the green line, in Linwood. So it's it's music to my ears now. But I've always lived in front of like, or in the, my block has always been the entrance to a freeway. So I know no other way to live than by a freeway. Um, but I've never thought of it that way, of it being an ocean sound. So that's pretty cool. I think the like distinct sounds of LA that I really connected with what Viva said, because I also live in Linwood, are the trucks.
Yeah.
The trucks are like going past like Imperial or like Washington, like it's like, or I mean MLK, like it's just like
And
sounds
it's
that
24/7.
are,
It's like nonstop because they're going, because the port is on the way. So it's like nonstop. You get used to it. It's weird.
it's my alarm clock, if anything. Like, like when it's passing at 6 a.m., you have to get up, or you have to be in bed by 10 p.m. when it's still passing by. But I guess there's no distinction there.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
for me, growing up in South Central, I lived 2 blocks away from the freight train. So that would also be my favorite sound because I felt like it always made me feel like I was out in the middle of nowhere, you know? Because it seemed like such an outdated thing, like for us to have like this freight train coming through you know, coming through. And now those tracks are abandoned now, and now the metro is making a rail there. So it's crazy how things change too. Now the kids growing up there are
Yeah.
going to hear the metro rail and not the freight train that I heard growing up. So
Okay, I just have to jump in because I've been telling Elizabeth that we would get to her question, and so
oh,
I
sorry
just,
about that.
no, yeah, yes, I hate interrupting good discussion. I have just, yeah, okay. So Elizabeth has said regarding the earlier comment on Spanish writing and the relationship with the language, have you found that writing in Spanish tends to align with certain types of writing or themes?
Is that for either one of us?
I think that's more for you, Viva.
I think either could answer. I don't know if, and yeah.
I mean, too, but you go for Viva.
Okay.
I'll answer.
I definitely feel like with Spanish, I can go into magical realism a lot better and spirituality, and I can describe otherworldly things in a more accurate way. Just because I grew up in that kind of environment where like we freely talked about, you know, um, animas, like spirits in Mexico, and like we talked about, like my parents would share with me a lot of the mythology out there, and so and I didn't really get exposed to that in like English literature, because there was a lot of like fairy tales and the gingerbread man kind of stories when I was a little girl. So it just kind of changed the way that I use the language in Spanish. Like it kind of molded it into me being able to explore all those themes. And in English, it always kind of feels kind of clunky to me when I try to go into that realm. It feels too new agey to me when I try to write about those things in English. but in Spanish, I feel like connected to it. So yeah.
I chime in. I feel like, well, me and Viva, like I was part of Viva's writing workshop, which was an awesome space. I'm so grateful for,
Oh yeah.
and I feel like she got to hear all of our writing, like whether it was in English or in Spanish, and like see how we kind of like navigated through the languages. And like personally, I wrote both in English and Spanish and a mix of both at times, because I have this, I don't know if it sounds like odd to say, but like I like distorting either language. I learned English late, so I was probably 11 years old, and I feel like I had to perfect it, as many of us do. Feel like we have to do that, or that's our responsibility. So it made me so happy to be able to just like, if it comes out in Spanish, it comes out in Spanish. If it comes out in English, the same way. And like being able to mix it and just like find a new way to just describe certain things, certain sentiments in either language gives me comfort. Even using both for the most part, because I can't, I feel like I can't do it solely like in English or solely in Spanish anymore. Even though I do tend to like write in both languages separate if I can, but I prefer to do it together without following a theme either. If it falls onto a theme and people can argue that, cool. But like I like to think that it's just telling another story, you know, in any language or a created language. So yeah.
Okay. I kind of feel that maybe we should get to the prompt, unless somebody wants to raise their hand and ask another question.
Yeah, I think we have enough time for like another video question or something.
Yeah, we can definitely take a video question. Anybody wants to chime in right now or raise their hand? No?
I have a question. I grew up in Los Angeles, but I'm now in Miami. And something that I've really missed hearing people say and listening these last 2 weeks is hearing people call each other homies and homegirl. And I want to hear like what other language you guys think is very specific to LA. Especially like I know Viva, you've done like a lot of Latino writing series in other places, and what kind of things you think makes LA writers unique.
What makes LA writers unique? Man, that's. I mean, I feel like there's so much material to work with when you're in LA, like because there's so many different parts of LA that are just so unique to its own place. Like if you grew up in Hollywood, you're probably not gonna have as much in common as like somebody who grew up in South Central. You know, like there's there's a lot of like differences just based on like where you are, even if we're not that far. So I think it's always interesting because I've been all around, you know, getting to know all kinds of poets, and I think it's always just weird and interesting to have it like almost everything be its own little culture, its own little enclave. Like Hollywood has its own like inside jokes and like weird things that I probably wouldn't understand. But then I could talk about South Central and people wouldn't maybe not understand what I'm talking about. But like we all like it's like a playground. Like we all can explore this area. So what makes it unique? I also think like the language thing, like we can just easily switch into Spanish or Spanglish. We don't necessarily have to just speak English all the time. Like I always find myself just all of a sudden hablando en español con mis amigos, and everybody's just like, oh, and everybody, it just becomes like a party once you start speaking different languages. So I don't know. Um, LA, what makes it unique? I think that's like what we're all trying to write about and still kind of discovering.
I mean, to me, what makes us unique, it's not so much switching from English to Spanish, because a lot of you know, Latino writers, Latinx writers do that, you know, that are from all over. Florida, Texas, all over. I think it's kind of how we can talk about a lot of different cultures, you know,
Yeah.
because we are far apart, but we make those travels. We go to East LA to eat at King Taco. We'll go to Hollywood to go to In and Out. We'll go to Koreatown
Yeah.
to eat Korean barbecue. We'll go eat Filipino food. We'll go eat uh, barbecue over on Crenshaw.
Yeah.
To me, it's about jumping into different cultures. You know.
You're right. And you know what's funny is that you can always kind of tell where someone is from. Like I met somebody from Montebello, and they kind of had like this kind of, they kind of sounded like they were from South Central, and they were like, "Guess where I'm from?" And I'm like, you sound a little too country. Like there's something country about your accent. So you're not from South Central. And I was like, you must be from like some farm area or something. And he was like, yeah, well, I'm from Montebello. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of like helped my parents with some horses at one point. And I was like, yeah, you kind of have like, so, and then I noticed that too with like, yeah, like people that grew up on the west side, it's obvious, even if they're Latino, that they're not like, you can tell where everybody's from based on how they talk. Um, I think that's really interesting, especially when I meet other people from South Central. Because I'm like, oh yeah, like you are from South Central because I can hear it, like that gives me the indicator. Like I know you are because you can't fake that. So I always find that exciting too, trying to find out where someone is from based on their accent, LA accent. So
Mhm.
Um, somebody somebody's asking here how long it takes to write a poem, and I think each of us would probably have a different answer to that. It just depends because I mean, for me, a poem can take me years or it can take me hours, so it just
right.
it's different, you know.
Yeah, definitely for me too. Like sometimes it's already in my head and I'm like, oh, I just gotta write it down. Sometimes I'm writing it and it's not in my head and I'm discovering it as I write it and I go somewhere and I try to make sense of it and it becomes a whole adventure. Um, I really try to have fun with it and I try not to make it too much of a chore. So however long it takes, but I really try to like challenge myself to, you know, um, to do it, to just like get something on paper.
Um,
I feel like I got used to the 20 minutes that we would have in those writing circles in South Central, Soul Central Writers Workshop. So for some reason, I mean, not to say it's like completely like a perfect poem or that it's ready to be shared, but I've been able to knock out as much as I can in 20 minutes. Thanks to that workshop because I
Yeah,
feel like I already, like Riva mentioned, like I already have what I want to write down, and like even if it's just like a journal entry, like their journal entries, however entry it is, like it's writing it on paper, and then just like teasing it out or like erasing the marks when I write, like draw out or sketch after like putting it in permanent marker.
yeah. And then you
So
throw
it
it
really,
away. And then she throws it away. She
don't
just,
call me out on this call. That's
she
not the
really
place to
does.
do it.
No, but I really do think that 20, you mean you really did. I was like, wait, don't throw it. And she was like, throw it like doing a shot like that, like into a trash can. But yeah, I do think like 20 minutes is very manageable
Mhm.
writing. Give yourself 20 minutes to write a journal entry, uh, some random thoughts, you know, maybe try to compose a poem. But like 20 minutes is really just like a good habit to have. And there isn't much pressure behind it. The point is just to get something right, get some writing done. And yeah, it's a good habit, 20 minutes.
okay,
Yeah, right. She's an archivist, right? And she's throwing away her work.
we're not
Why are you?
we're running low on
Somebody's
time. We're
chatting about
not
you.
we're running low on time, guys. We're not going to be able to get to all the questions, but I did want to get to one last one real quick. Was it this is from Abigail? Was it ever difficult to share poetry with others because it felt it was too personal or vulnerable?
In the
Oh,
beginning, when I first started reading poetry, when I started performing, yeah, any poem could trigger me. It didn't even matter if it was personal or not, or if it was just super abstract. Just having my voice be heard was vulnerable, and I was like, I felt like I was giving myself a lot of myself. Um, Now not so much because I practice, but still, like when I'm writing, I always check with myself. Like, am I comfortable writing this down? Am I comfortable sharing this? And that's where like I always stay within that because I've I've like overshared in the beginning, and I just did not was not happy with myself. So I think it's important to ask yourself those questions when you're writing. Like, am I willing to put this out there? Am I willing to take shots for maybe something that I'm gonna say? Am I gonna trigger other people? Am I okay with dealing with that? Because some people might get triggered, and then they want to talk to you about what triggered them, and that may trigger you even more. So I think that's important to realize, like, hey, if I trigger people, they might come to me with their trauma or whatever, and that might trigger me even more. So that happened to me too, where I was like, oh, I was triggering them and they were triggering me, and I was like, oh, I'm not gonna do that as much. I'm gonna be a little bit more, you know, strategic about what I share. So
Vane?
yeah, I feel that it's important to feel safe. I feel like I go with my instinct in terms of safety. I'm not really one to open up so fast, but I know when I first went into Viva's workshop, I was just an open book when it came to writing because I just wrote it all out and shared. Typically I wouldn't, like in another space I would just like write and then put it away and never look back on it. And even though now I do throw it away, I think it served its purpose in the moment. So I write, I share, and then I feel like I was able to be vulnerable for however long I was, and I was comfortable with it, and onward to the next poem, or onward to the next piece. So yeah.
Cool. All right. Now we're gonna talk about our writing prompts. Vani, I think you have something prepared.
yeah, we have a lot.
I do.
So yeah,
Yeah, is
and
it up?
it's gonna be up on the website too, you guys, just in case you missed it. We're gonna put this all on the website,
Yes.
drylandla.
Yes. So, following with sound, what are, write about the next three sounds you hear and connect them. Describe each sound in as much detail as you can. Is it loud or is it quiet? Is it continuous or does it cut off or is it short? And what is their relation to each other? And as an extra bonus, if you'd like, since it supports me, if you want to draw, if you want to doodle along with your writing, you're more than welcome to do that.
Yeah. Okay. And then I put in a bonus prompt in case you wanted to do this part, which I think is going to be because we just want to know what you're listening to and what you're into. And so this is the bonus prompt. You are throwing a post-pandemic party. What is the DJ going to play? Create a post-pandemic party playlist, limited to 7 songs only. We're gonna post the best one, the one that we like the best, like the one that the party that we would actually go to, and then we're gonna post it on our social media. So we're really into the 90s right now, but also like rock en español, always cumbias, we love our shit. But we also R&B, so just whatever you like, yeah, submit it. Go to the website to get the submission guidelines. We have a special section for it, so you guys can find us on drylandla.org/submit. And I think we have a like a We can show you guys the website right now, just so you can see where to find the submission guidelines. Yeah, so we're really looking forward to everybody's prompts. We are going to consider them for publication in the next issue. So we had a prompt last week, and then we're going to have a prompt next week. And all these prompts are going to be read by me and Nikolai. And we're going to choose a couple ones that we think are dope, and we're going to put them in the next issue. So here it is. Here's our website right here. And the special quarantine guidelines are right here, open to LA poets and plays submissions. And please just follow what it says, because just make our lives easy, please, because, you know, we're trying to have a good time during our quarantine, and we're looking forward to everybody's submissions and, you know, playlists.
Uh, Before we say goodbye, do you guys want to share any social media info?
You can follow me on Instagram. These are our Instagrams and Twitters. Oh no, just mainly Instagram. Yeah.
I'm not so sure about I mean, you can follow our radio show. So I co-host a show with my homegirl, Nidia, which is, I think she's on the call. Hey, Nidia. You can check us out on Wednesdays we used to be on from 9 to 10 p.m., but now we're on from 6 to 7. So you can check that out at 101.5 FM. Granted, it is a community radio station, so you can only listen to us from a 10-mile radius, but you can also look us up online. So it's also available online anywhere. But if you are in the Boyle Heights area, or downtown LA, even South Central, you could kind of hear it. I picked it up a few times. And the Bocha Punks page too. We do a lot of cool archival work. We write a lot on there. It's a bunch of us, so it's pretty sick. Michelle has also been a part of it. I know she's on the call too, Viva. So check all those spaces out, support all artists and all writing. DIY, go for it.
Yeah. And I just
Bocha
want to
Punks
thank
Power Hour.
I just want to
Oh, sorry.
thank everybody for being here. I want to thank Brittany, Rob, doing tech in the background, our featured poets. And I want to remind everybody that we're doing one more of these next Friday, April 24th. The theme is going to be food. Me, of course, I'm going to feature along with Caro Ska. And then the discussion host, it's going to be Viva and Eric Huerta from LA Taco. So we're definitely going to be talking about food. Tune in. There's also going to be poems about somebody who's actually working right now in a restaurant, Caro. She's going to be sharing that experience. So definitely come back. It's going to be awesome. And that's it for me. I don't know, Brittany, if you have any parting words?
I do. Thank you, Nikolai. So I'm just going to say, in case the prompt was up just for too short, we will, Dryland will be posting it later on various channels. I'll keep this room open till 7:15 in case you want to feel inspired and write here. I also just want to shout out the Autry's website in terms of, if you missed last Friday, we had two awesome poets, Janice and Christian, who are actually in this call as well. We post the recording of the live events on our blog. And so if you missed any part of the conversation, want to revisit, we'll be doing that next week as well. And so you can find that information at theautry.org. And now I think if you so feel inspired, just write or feel free. I also just want to thank everyone for keeping this a safe space. It is always a risk opening up kind of a Zoom with all of the negative news that Zoom gets. And so thank you for respecting the rules of not talking over each other, raising your hands, using the chat appropriately, and keeping your mics muted. We can only continue to do programs like this if the space stays safe, and that takes every single one of us. So yeah, just wanted to thank Dryland, thank the poets, and thank y'all for kicking Friday night off right, even if we're all staying in.
Thank you.
Yeah, had a good time.
Everyone.
Thank you, guys. Left
See
it.
you.
Hasta luego.
Thanks, everyone.